So, you want to buy a bicycle? Well, you gonna learn today. So, when you're purchasing a new bicycle, it can seem a little bit daunting. And I actually work in sales of bicycles, so I know exactly what most people actually go through when they're actually wanting to choose a bicycle. More often than not, budget is the number one priority when people are choosing bicycles. However, I don't think it is the most important thing. Now, I've made this mistake in the past. I've walked into a bike shop or had a look at a bicycle online, got sucked into what the salesperson's pitch was, and ended up walking away with the bicycle, which I seemed happy with at the time. But as the time goes on and you realize that you wanted to go trail riding with some friends or do some epically long cycles on the road with some of your mates, that you've realized that the bicycle which was sold to you isn't actually the correct bicycle you need. And so, number one thing I would say when purchasing a bicycle is, what are you going to use it for? If you're going to use it for commuting to work, like trails, park riding, you don't need something crazy. If your intention is to go riding with some mates, you've got some downhill bikes with some full face helmets, you're going to need something with a little bit more rigidity, let's call it that. So bigger suspension, bigger tires, stronger wheels, better drivetrain, and all of these things can factor in, could give you an idea of what you actually need to purchase when you're buying a bicycle. So moving on, the next thing would then be your budget. How much do you want to spend on a bicycle? How much do you have to spend on a bicycle? Do you want to go all in and buy the most expensive bicycle on the market, which I probably don't recommend doing? And then also, how are you going to pay for it too? So a lot of people buy their bicycles cash, credit card, things like that. There are a lot of options out there at the moment on the market. Companies like Treads, even Halfords, that do 0% finance options over a 12-month period. So your unobtainable bike, which was too expensive for you in the beginning, may actually be affordable for you if you take up those options. And obviously, I'm not a financial service provider. I can't give you advice on these things, but those options are available out there on the market. So let's have a look at what makes a bicycle a good bicycle. Why are you paying £300 for a Carrera Vengeance and £7,000 for a Scott Spark RC900, which is a top of the range cross-country bike? Firstly, let's have a look at what you're buying. So a lot of these things, which I tell a lot of customers, is you're buying into a brand, you're buying into a lifestyle, you're buying into an image. And a lot of these things, when you buy Scott's, Treks, Marin, YT, Canyon, all these big branded bicycles that are cool. And I say it in inverted commas, but they are actually really cool bicycles. But I say it in inverted commas because a lot of us are dragged into that sort of sheep and herd mentality of a bicycle being a good bicycle because that rider rides those bicycles. And that isn't always the case. When we look at a bicycle, what we need to look at is what components we've got on there. That's probably the most important thing. And a lot of people don't understand this, but a frame is a frame. Some frames are better than others, but what makes a bicycle really, really expensive, you'll see a lot of the times, like you'll have a look on these websites like Treads and Chain Reaction Cycles and these other mainstream bicycle retailers, and you'll have a look at a bike and go, hey, that's the same bike in a different color. What makes it different? And what makes it more expensive and different is the componentry on them. So we have a look at some of the other things, like suspension, your gearing system, your brakes, your wheels, your cranks. These things are the major components of your bicycle. Now when I look at, or when I give advice to people buying a bicycle, and someone who's potentially quite serious about buying a bicycle, what you want to do when you're purchasing a bicycle nowadays is have a look at what your expensive components are on your bicycle. So the things like your suspension, your wheels, not necessarily your drivetrain, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the expensive components that you don't really have to, like if you wanted to ever upgrade your bicycle at a later stage when you become more proficient in cycling, or you've got a group of friends, you've become a better rider, you want to have a better experience when you're riding your bicycle, those things are sometimes monumentally expensive. Like for instance, if you buy a set of Fox 38s as an upgrade over a RockShox Revelation which you had on your bicycle, both of them are good forks. One is a premium top-end fork, and one's the other one. On the other side is sort of an entry level, get you started on the trail sort of fork. The price difference is £800-900 between the two, but that £1,200 or £1,300 that you pay for your Fox 38 afterwards is almost the price of a new bicycle. So when I say, you need to understand where your goals are going to be when in terms of cycling it. Choose your bicycle correctly from the beginning, I would say, from the onset. So if you're looking at a bicycle, you can't expect a £300 bicycle to perform the same way as a £3,000 bicycle. It's just not going to happen. And more often than not, and I've seen this out on the trails when I'm riding, people taking these bicycles out onto the trails and struggling. Not just struggling, I mean, I think it's outright dangerous, because the suspension and components of the bicycle are not designed to do some of the things which they're attempting to do. And so you need to look at those obviously before you make your decision and bite the bullet. Now when you're looking at buying a new bicycle as well, you don't always need to buy a new bicycle. There's a lot of people online that look and upgrade their bicycles all the time. So you often find, like on places like Facebook Marketplace, and there's another one which I use, Spock, Gumtree, eBay. Those places, you can actually get really, really good deals on bicycles on them. But you need to know what you're looking for. And I think that's the most important thing. So I can give you a bit of tips and advice around that. So when you're looking at a bicycle online, it's got Fox 40s or it's got Fox 38s and all those things like that on there, and it's ticking all the right boxes for you. But you need to ask these questions to the sellers that are selling these bicycles. For instance, when last did they replace the chain and cassette on their bicycle? When last was the suspension serviced? Are there any markings or marrings on the actual stanchions of the forks, which are the uprights of the actual sliders of the actual fork itself? I mean, these things sometimes overlooked. A lot of the time, most of these people are quite honest about their bicycles, which is really nice. But you also need to do your own homework, because you don't want to be buying somebody else's problems. I mean, that may be one of the reasons why they're actually selling the bicycle in the first place. replacing some of those parts may be quite costly as well. Also have a look at things like if they have the original receipts. I mean, if the serial numbers on the bottom bracket are intact and are still visible on the bicycle, when you look at the bicycle, put the images in Google search, so to see if whether or not the bikes have been stolen, or people are looking for those bicycles. Those are all things that you should probably look out before you actually buy your bicycle as well. And then lastly, I would say, when you're also purchasing a bicycle, you're not just buying a bicycle. You're buying into a lifestyle, and also a whole bunch of equipment which you are going to most probably need when you start riding. So you need to also factor in things like purchasing a helmet. Never ever ride a bicycle without wearing a helmet. I know a lot of people love doing it, but I can tell you one thing: once you bash your head, it's not a pleasant experience. Things like buying mudguards, frame protection kits if you're buying really expensive bicycles as well, lights if you're commuting, expensive locks, and also things like, if you're buying a new bicycle, the upgrade things that you normally do on bicycles in the beginning, like tubeless conversions, as well as your pumps, things like that. So that's my main advice for you when you're purchasing a new bicycle. What I would say is, though, have a look at some of the links in the description below, and you can have a look at some of the bikes, what you can get. I'll also include some some of the websites which you can actually have a look for bicycles at the moment. And thanks for watching my channel, and hopefully once we've got your new bicycle, we can actually start going through some of our tutorials in terms of service and maintenance of the bicycle. Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.